I'm sharing a reading experience. I'm reading from the book Gone, and I'm sharing it with you now. Today I'll go from March 14th to the 17th. I hope you listen and receive something worthwhile from this. This video might inspire you to read this book. It's my hope that you'll search from the best books and gain information and ideas to help you to become a better person. The more you read, the better you'll think, and the better you think, the more you'll be able to face life's challenges successfully. March 14th. This was Mama's birthday. She was born on a Friday in 1902 near Owine, Ohio. Mama's parents were David and Anna. They were farmers. Her younger sister, Aunt Faye, was born in 1911 and was the last child of David and Anna's to die. David's sister, Aunt Maddie Amanda, was a school teacher. She was so involved and busy, she never had time for house cleaning. So her house was always a mess. David's oldest brother, Jonathan, on the other hand, was so clean and particular, Mama didn't even like to go over there. He would do things like going around wiping finger marks off of doors, walls, and furniture that the children had touched. When Mama was a young girl growing up in Iowa, her mother taught her how to make great bread, cakes, and cookies. She once asked her father, whom she called Poppy, how he liked what she had fixed. He said, "It tastes like more." David had a great sense of humor and liked to tell Pat and Mike jokes. March 15th. When Mama was 11 years old, Anna took Mama, Rosie, Harvey, Hallie, and Faye to Columbus, Kansas to pick strawberries, while David and his oldest children, Bill and Tom, stayed on the farm to keep it running. It was here that Mama first saw Papa when he was the row boss at the strawberry fields. Mama was running across the field when he saw a man under a tree. He said, "Howdy." This was the first time Mama ever heard that expression. Eventually, Mama had to go back to Iowa along with the rest of her family. Papa was the row boss until after the season was over, and then he got a job on the railroad. It wasn't until 7 years later they would meet again. Some ladies in Kansas took Grandma Anna Day to court over her children. Grandma was a working mother, a complete breach of social norms in those days, a social sin. My mama sat on the front row of the court with her younger brothers and sisters. Mama told me, "My legs felt so heavy, and I was missing my Poppy. I was so worried about what would happen next." The judge asked the women who had brought the complaint against Grandma, "Do these children always look this good?" One of the women replied, "Well, when they go to school." The judge stated, "I do not see any evidence here of domestic abuse or neglect. Until such evidence can be obtained, I will not waste the court's time." Speaking to my grandmother, the judge said, "I suggest that you go back to your husband in Iowa so I don't see you here again." Case dismissed. Grandma moved her and her children to her brother Claude Whitaker's house. While they were staying at the Whitakers, a rumor got to Grandma that the court system was going to take the children away from her. The following day, Claude and his brother Harry went to the courthouse and asked a number of questions. "Where are Anna's children?" They replied, "Oh, they're on their way to Ocean Dreams." Ocean Dreams was an orphan home. They hurried back home and told Anna, "Yes, they're planning on taking the children." Grandma immediately packed and took her children to the train station in the dark of the night. There was a train going to Dunning, Nebraska later that night, so she took that one. This is how Grandma was introduced into Dunning. A little later, they returned to David in Iowa. A joyous reunion ensued. David described the meeting by saying, "They fell from the sky." They all ended up moving back to Dunning after Mama's father died a few years later in 1918. Mama told us of the Dunning sandhills and how the wind blew the sand in her face in the summer and blew the snow in her face in the winter. Not much grew in Dunning because it was nothing but sand. Our friend Joe Hyatt wrote about the sandhills in Dunning. Sandhills by Joe Hyatt. If you ever read in the sandhill in the western Nebraska land, you'd sure know the feeling of lonely. And I'll tell you, it sure ain't that grand. The wind's always blowing. There ain't nothing to slow it down, except a 3-wired fence in Dakota, and you can't even find a good town. In the winter, the cold is ferocious, the snow piling up in the draws. Now the coyotes are hunting for shelter where they can warm up their paws. Sam Splinter owned a general store there in Dunning and told us that when he moved there in 1929, there was nothing but sand. In some places during the Dust Bowl, they had black sand that caused dust pneumonia. The sandhills were spared the black dust. During the Dust Bowl, stripping Oklahoma and Kansas of its topsoil in the 1930s, soil and seeds were deposited on the sandhills. Now there are all sorts of plant life there, and cattle graze on it. This is one of the few positive results of the Dust Bowl. March 16th. Enid Stower came to visit, but I was tired through my heart. The crocuses are blooming. Dad planted them a long time ago. One time, a post-register photographer took a picture of Dad's crocuses popping up out of the snow, which showed up on the front page as a promise of spring around the corner. Like spring, one day I will be with Dad again, and my heart will no longer be tired. When Brian was about 4 years old, he chose a rhubarb plant at Town and Country Nurseries when they were located by the ballpark. It was a good plant, and it had been divided over the years into other plants. The children also got a wealthy apple tree at the time as a Mother's Day present. Over the years, we have all gardened, watered, and taken care of the yard, which kept us busy. March 17th. Dad's grandma, Maggie Fagan, said the potatoes had to be planted on St. Patrick's Day. Maggie was a hard worker and a big gardener. Maggie was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and at 5 years old, her mother had died. She was sent to her mother's family, the McQuillans in Illinois, where she grew up learning the ways of the farmer. She met and married Henry, who also had a love of growing things. Grandpa Henry had hotbeds made with layers of chicken manure and soil covered with grass for his tomatoes and cabbages. John Cap Myers says, Henry always had a joke. Henry delighted in his grandchildren, and Dad liked to follow Grandpa Henry around while he inspected his fruit trees. Dad gained a love for fruit trees from his Grandpa Henry. Dad's other grandparents, Nancy and Alfred Rosel, were gentle people. Alfred liked mules better than horses because they were harder working and required less attention. Alfred grew wheat, corn, and oats to sell to the local elevators. They owned all the modern conveniences, like Alfred's Model T Ford. Alfred and Ernie England built radios and set up transmission towers for hill to hill communication with each other. Alfred liked to make toys like wooden airplane whirligigs for the grandchildren. Grandma Nancy would sit up at night with the grandchildren and teach them about the star constellations. When Dad was 5 years old, they went to Grandpa Alfred's and Grandma Nancy's place for Christmas. When they got there on Christmas Eve, Grandpa Alfred came out of the bedroom crying. Grandma Nancy had suddenly died. He spent a few more years on his own farm and then would spend a few months at Dad's parents and then a few months at his other daughter's home, Floy Walton. It was said St. Patrick spent 30 years helping rid Ireland of its demonic snakes and adopted the shamrock as the symbol for the Trinity. We are all different religions, races, and creeds, but we all have a bit of Irish when we celebrate St. Patrick's Day. My grandmother had a Quaker mother and a Baptist father and ended up going to both churches. Mama said her aunts and uncles were Catholic and would say, "The Catholics are good people." My grandfather was a good person, a good farmer, a good husband, a good father, as well as a good neighbor who was well thought of. But when it came to religion, he refused to discuss anything about it except to declare, "I'm Irish." I guess St. Patrick reminds us all of Mark 6:50, to be of good cheer. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, God care.